Okay, so we are going to start now. I'll do a countdown. 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everyone. This is Robert Hubbell from today's edition newsletter on Saturday, December 13th. Thank you for joining me for our regular Saturday get together. I really get a lot out of these meetings. I hope you do too. So thank you for joining me. I actually want to start with a minute or two of just some personal stories and reflections. I have a point, but this is Jill's suggestion, and I've learned Jill's suggestions are right on always. So, I wrote last night an overly flowery opening paragraph, and I mentioned that my English professor would have given me a mercy grade of a B minus for engaging in purple prose. And we were talking at breakfast about Frank Carruthers, who was that English professor, a great man, a great poet, a great instructor, educator. And, Jill and I went to school together. We were in the sometimes same classes, same departments. This is a really sore point. I hesitate to bring it up, but it's relevant to the story. Um, so, you're young, you're in college, you're full of yourself. I was fortunate to be awarded the departmental honors in English, which is the part that irritates Jill because she was a very fine English student and went on to become a lifelong educator and educated thousands and thousands of young women. I went to Frank Carruthers, this English professor, all full of myself, and said, I'd like some advice. I'm thinking of either going on to get my doctorate in English, thinking, I was God's gift to the English world, or maybe I'll go to law school. What do you think? And Frank said, oh my God, you and Jill are going to get married. You'll never be able to support a family on an English instructor's salary. Go to law school. He did not hesitate, and that made up my mind. I applied to and went to law school, and the rest is history. And yesterday, Jill was going through cleaning out a drawer, and she found this picture. Don't laugh. This is a picture of me at that time. I'm the guy with all that hair right there and the bell-bottom jeans. This is a picture of, I belonged to a group in college. We lived on campus. We worked essentially full-time jobs to pay for our education, and that's how I made it through college. So interesting to look back where we were. And this brings me to my reflection for this morning, which is about you and your prescience, your ability to see and respond to the danger of the second Trump administration when many people were clueless. I wrote in the newsletter about the fact, and I linked to a live stream between Susan Wagner and Leah Greenberg. I urge you to watch that. It's really kind of very refreshing because they talk about the role of the grassroots, especially during the first few months of Trump 2.0. And it was a weird time because many of you understood the danger and were reacting and were, frankly, we had our hair on fire, rightfully so. We could see what was coming. But others couldn't. I mean, our congressional representatives were complacent, quiescent, obedient. The same with universities and law firms and corporations. And billionaires and media companies, they were all just obeying in advance and collapsing. And yet the grassroots, you were out there raising the alarm. And, sometimes when you're in that position, you can feel like you're a little bit crazy. Maybe you're a conspiracy theorist, but we were right. And thank God we were right, because virtually every bulwark defending democracy and the Constitution, save the courts, collapsed. But the grassroots did not. They stood firm. They understood the danger, at a time when it really mattered. And we are now in a moment where I'm going to urge you not to become complacent again because we're starting to see success. But the only reason we're here is because you showed up. You showed up on April 5th and June 14th and October 18th and November 4th and December 9th. And, if you listen to that Susan Wagner, Leah Greenberg live stream or video, they will remind you that the grassroots really was dismissed and viewed as a problem in the beginning months of the Trump administration, viewed as a problem by the Democratic establishment. And I'm going to take a detour here and tell sort of an anonymized story about my own involvement in that. There was a collection of leaders of grassroots chapters. They were completely angry at the performance of a local politician or a politician in the state of California, and they had arranged to have a dozen or so of them meet with this politician to explain their unhappiness. And boy, were they unhappy. They wanted to say they regretted voting for this politician, and they wanted him to resign, and he was doing this wrong and that wrong. And as always, this group was 100% women. God bless the women for their leadership. And so they reached out to me and said, you know what? We need a token man to be part of this conversation. So I listened and I said, okay, I will show up. And so I agreed to join this call. And I was just going to be an observer. There were going to be a dozen or so other representatives on the call. And then the call got scheduled like on 30 minutes notice. And so the organizer called me and said, we got 30 minutes. You're the only person I can get in touch with. Will you join me on this call with this politician? I said, sure, I'll do that. Again, thinking I was going to listen. And I got on the call, and the person who arranged it said, okay, thank you for meeting with us. Robert's going to tell you what we think. It's not what I was expecting. But I was a very faithful messenger of the concerns of these groups. And I said many, many hard things to a politician whom I have deep respect for. It was the most uncomfortable conversation of my life. And he pushed back and said that I didn't understand the way things were done in Congress, and that we needed to understand, how things were done and be supportive of Democrats in Congress, not attacking them. And it was, there was really just a lot of pushback. Very, very uncomfortable. I was frankly shocked that was sort of the attitude. Now, this story has a very happy ending because this politician, frankly, 24 hours later, and I'm not taking credit for this, went back and talked to his staff, and his staff said, yeah, that's right. You got to do all the things that this group said you should be doing. We're hearing it from our constituents. And he turned on a dime. God bless him. He's doing a great job. But the point is that it took talking to people and saying, you are missing the moment. The grassroots, you were not missing the moment. You understood the danger. And I think it was the same in 2018 and 2020 and 2022 and 2020. The grassroots is out there. They're doing all the hard work. They're the free labor for the campaigns. And what they get for it is dismissed and demeaned and disregarded. And I think after, as I said, April 5th, June 14th, October 18th, November 4th, we're not being dismissed or disregarded anymore. And that's good, because we remain one of the last two standing bulwarks to the defense of democracy. I want to tell just one other story, because it goes to sort of how we have to be confident of what we are seeing and how it tells us that we cannot let our guard down, how we cannot become complacent. Let's all remember back to that awful morning of 9/11 when it happened. And for those of us on the West Coast, it took hours or days or weeks for it to sink in, for the enormity of what happened to sink in. And that was a Monday morning, and that was the motion day in federal court. And so there's this massive terrorist attack on the East Coast. And the question is, what happens to all the lawyers like me who are supposed to be in federal court on Monday morning arguing motions and that sort of thing? And so lawyers began to call to the court and saying, is court canceled today? And so some just clueless federal judges started issuing orders that if any lawyers dared not show up that morning to argue law in motion because of some airplane crash on the East Coast, those judges were going to sanction those attorneys. Shame on those judges. Well, of course, an hour later, 2 hours later, the federal courts shut down. All of Los Angeles shut down. All of California shut down. But the point is that those judges who issued those orders failed to comprehend the moment. And that brings me to my point for this morning. We have to understand the gravity of the moment. We have to understand that this is indeed an existential fight for democracy and for the Constitution. And it continues to be so despite the fact that the last 2 weeks have been very good for those resisting Trump and defending the Constitution. The greatest threat that we face right now is that people will think, oh, the polls are great, Trump is unpopular, I can ease up, I don't have to show up, this is just a special election, what's the big deal? All those crazy people standing on the corner, they'll go to the polls, they'll take care of it. No, wrong. More than ever, there is an urgency to convince others that we cannot let our guards down, that we need not only to win in 2026, we need to crush the MAGA extremist movement. And we must do that in order to begin the reconstruction and the rehabilitation of democracy and the rule of law. We can't have a 2 or 3 person majority in the House. We need a 40-person majority in the House. We need to flip the Senate. We need to impeach Trump again and again, and that's a separate topic. Don't get me started, but we have to have the Article 1 power behind us to begin this reformation so we can elect the president in 2028 and undo all of this horrible stuff that has happened to our democracy in the last 11 months. That's a big job, and it is one that is not going to get easier. And the only way that we are going to prevail, the only way that in our generation we will undo this damage is if we win big and we act boldly. No more half measures. No more, let's be partisan because we might offend some people. Tough. That the moment for worrying about other people's feelings and bipartisanship is over. We have an obligation to the Constitution, to the United States of America, to the Union and the Republic to be brave, to step up, to be counted, to come to its defense, And in January of 2025, that's what you did. That's what you did when other people were saying, oh, you don't understand the way that things work. And, we'll work the back rooms and the regular processes and those sorts of things. Absolutely not. Trump has taken the guardrails down. And it is no solution for us to say, let's go back to business as usual. We have to abolish the filibuster. We have to enlarge the Supreme Court. We have to pass the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We have to nationalize Roe v. Wade. We have to do all sorts of things that might hurt other people's feelings or make them feel like Democrats are in charge and they're kicking you-know-what and taking names. And that's exactly what we have to do. So you were spot on in January of 2025 in recognizing the danger. And the danger was complacency and assuming that this was business as usual. So you have to be spot on right now in recognizing that the danger is complacency, that the danger is that we think that we have this in the bag. We do not. Polls are not votes. Look at what happened with Afton Bain. An incredible candidate, ran an incredible campaign, swung a Trump district by 12 points, 13 points. That's great. But she lost. And here's something that we should all reflect on. If the same Democrats in that Tennessee congressional district who showed up in 2024 showed up for that special election, Afton Bain would have won by 20,000 votes. She lost by 5,000 votes. Turnout. How do we convince our friends and neighbors and complete strangers that democracy is on the line? I don't have the secret sauce, but I know part of it involves you continuing to do exactly what you're doing by standing on street corners, by raising the alarm, by talking to friends and neighbors, by converting people one at a time and in dozens. We have to step out of our comfort zone and out of our settled expectations. And we just have to be bold. We have to be brave. I'm not the world's greatest social media user, and frankly, I avoid it. But I think the moment has come to say that's not acceptable anymore. I'm going to step out in a different way because I think that the message of the newsletter needs to get to more people. And your message, your beliefs, your passion needs to get to more people. You've got to start posting on Facebook and Blue Sky and wherever you are. And maybe it's writing more postcards. Maybe it's standing out on the street corner more frequently. Whatever we have been doing, we need to do more of it. That's the message that we should take from having arrived at this moment where we can finally feel that we have seized the momentum, we've captured the public sentiment, that the public understands the righteousness of our cause, but that's just the beginning. So there we go. All right. So Nikki Silver says something I hear a lot. In all due respect, we are on the call. We are the ones who are working for democracy, or we would not be on this call. I feel like I am being scolded and unseen. Absolutely not. I am praising you for what you're doing. You're the only people I have to talk to. There are people who are not on the call. How do I get to them? I get to them through you. And so if you feel like you're being scolded, it's actually the opposite. I'm talking to myself too. I'm saying that I need to step far outside of my own comfort zone. So yeah, we need to make ourselves feel uncomfortable. We need to do more because we are the ones who. There's a saying that I will try to get this wrong, and I apologize for going to a military metaphor, but you fight a war with the army you got. We're the army we have, and so you're the ones to hear the rallying cry. I can't talk to people who aren't here. So apologies if you feel that way, but we got to tough it out. It's up to us. Okay. So, Jill has written down some questions. I've got 10 minutes. I went on too long. I apologize for that. Okay. So, how do we deal with John Roberts? This is the one place where I think my view is darker than most. I think the Supreme Court is a complete lost cause. And I think the only thing that we can do is expand the court when we take over Congress and the presidency. It's just the only thing that we can do here. Do I think that the House Oversight Committee is sitting on a trove of worse Epstein files waiting for us to see what's going to be released in the future? That's a very good question. So just to set this up, the House Oversight Committee is getting information from the Epstein estate, and it's a lot of information, and the Democrats on the committee to their great credit, are going through yesterday 45,000 photos and got out 20 or 30. Um, and that, good for them, because what they're doing is they're keeping the DOJ honest in its production coming up on December 19th. Are they sitting on any documents sort of strategically so that if the Trump administration doesn't produce them, they can say, aha, here's one that you didn't produce? I don't know. I hope not. I think that keeping up the pressure on the DOJ and the Trump administration by showing them what we do have is the way to go. So let's, okay. So will we get to 270 Dems in the House, and what to do about Jeffries and Schumer? Um, I'm trying to think. 270, is that 2/3? I'm not certain of the significance of that number, but that would mean that we would pick up 50 votes, 60 votes. Can we do that? Look, we have still a year to convince people that Democrats are the solution here. And so I'm not going to put any artificial constraint on what I think we can get to, but I want to make the point that we cannot assume victory. We want to plan for a crushing defeat, but we cannot assume even a single vote margin of victory. We have to do both. Jeffries and Schumer, I endorse the position of indivisible, which is that any Democrat running for Senate or for reelection in the Senate who doesn't commit to changing out leadership in the Senate should be primaried. We have seen, I mean, some of the most painful news conferences I think I ever saw were the ones by the Democratic leadership in the Senate in the early days of the Trump administration. I mean, my God, they were just clueless. They were painful. It projected a sense of do nothingness. And my God, Senate Democrats were voting to confirm people who had no business being nominated. And we saw senators say things, well, this crazy person isn't as crazy as the one they might put forward, so I'm going to vote for them. No, we needed to fight. And I think it was a failure of moral leadership on Schumer's part. I understand the argument over Jeffries, which is that he has been trying to pull the party more towards centrist Democrats, more towards, as people say, corporate interests. He has been variously an effective leader and sometimes, I think, an out-of-touch leader. And I think what he needs to do is to feel the momentum in his caucus and lead them. I think he's capable of leading the Democratic caucus to great things in the House. I don't have that confidence in Schumer. I respect anybody who disagrees with my view. Okay, so here we go. I think I'm going to just sort of round up here and say that, we never know what our actions are going to lead to. I look back at my English professor who he probably was a 30-second conversation to him and he might not have remembered it 2 days later, but it had a huge impact on my life. And you're the same way. I mean, as the person who said, I'm the one out there doing these things. Well, your impact is greater than you even know. I mean, there are people who see you or who take comfort or solace or who are inspired by you and you don't know. And in that way, you are a blessing in their lives. What you're doing is a mitzvah. And the point is just keep doing it. I mean, someone said they didn't Jill wanted me to put this picture up again of me as a college student with long hair and bell bottoms. So I will do that. But, that's me in the front there. You never know where life is going to take you. But what we do know is that we have agency. We have the ability to decide that we're not going to be potted plants. We're not going to be victims. We're not going to take it anymore. We are going to take charge of our destinies. And that's what you all have done. And God bless you for it. And if you are tired or exhausted and need a break, take it, but come back. Just don't quit. But if you can dig deeper, if you can do more, our country is calling us at this point in time. And we must respond if we value democracy, if we want to give it to future generations. It's up to us. So that's it for today. Thank you all for joining me. I apologize for getting too excited here, and I hope no one else felt that I was scolding you. God bless you. Have a great weekend, everyone. Take care. Bye.